Hi guys and welcome to my channel Knowledge Resurrection, and today we are going to discuss about a very interesting topic. Is time travel to past possible? If you guys haven't checked out my previous video about how you can time travel to future with its mathematical proof, I suggest you to check that first. Okay, so now time travel to the past isn't as simple as traveling to the future because it creates a lot of paradoxes and the conditions required to travel to past seems far than achievable. Before I tell you about the possible ways that you can travel to the past, first let's understand that why traveling to past is such a big problem. Okay, so let's assume that somehow you created a machine and traveled back to your past and meet your own grandfather. So suppose that you killed your own grandfather. Now since you have killed your own grandfather in past, your father would not have been born and then you would not have been born. And if you are not even born, then how can you go back to the past and kill your grandfather? You can't do it. Hence, your grandfather is alive, hence, your father is alive, and hence, you are alive. Then again, you can go back to past, kill your grandfather, and this loop will keep on going. This is called the grandfather paradox. And this is one of the unsolved mysteries that originates when one travels to its past. Another paradox that comes from traveling to past is called causal loop or Bootstrap Paradox. For example, suppose you go back to time and you tell Einstein his theory of relativity when he is young and doesn't even have thought about it. Then Einstein will just copy the information and publish his paper on theory of relativity which you gave him. It will still be called as Einstein theory of relativity, but it comes from the information that you gave to Einstein, which in the first place you took from Einstein in your current time and go back in time to give his own information. So in this case the paradox is that the information about relativity has no origin. No one created it, it just passed on by you to Einstein and then to you. Now some scientists have found a way to come out of these paradoxes when you travel to the past. Let's first talk about the solution to the grandfather paradox. Now there are two ways you can solve the grandfather paradox. The first way is through the concept of parallel universe, according to which when you go back to kill your grandfather in past, you actually went back to another universe which is an exact copy of your universe. And when you kill your grandfather, it changes the reality of that universe, where your father is not born and hence you are not born. But in your universe, everything will be exactly the same. Your grandfather is living, hence your father is alive, and hence you are alive. Hence you go back in time and kill your grandfather, which is in another universe, where you are not born. Now, according to this concept of parallel universe, there are infinite copies of your universe, and every questionable action that you do when traveling to past, like killing your grandfather, will affect the reality of a different universe than yours. So it ultimately have no effect on your universe. Hence the paradox is solved. But according to me, it just avoids the paradox, doesn't really solve anything. And also this parallel universe concept is a fiction and is hypothetical. Another way to solve grandfather paradox is with the help of Novikov's self-consistency principle. The principle asserts that if an event exists that would create a paradox or any change to the past whatsoever, then the probability of that event is zero. It means that suppose when you go back to past and tried to kill your grandfather with a gun, there would be a mysterious force which would not let you to do it. Or even if you pull the trigger, something is bound to happen which will make sure that the bullet will not hit your grandfather, ultimately saying that the probability of your grandfather dying is zero. Now exactly what will stop you from killing your own grandfather, that nobody knows. This means, if taken literally, that if time machine exists, there can be no free will. You cannot will yourself to kill your younger self if you travel back in time. You can coexist, take yourself out for a beer, celebrate your birthday together, but somehow circumstances will dictate that you cannot behave in a way that leads to a paradox in time. Novikov supports this point of view with another argument. Physics already restricts your free will every day. You may will yourself to fly or to walk through a concrete wall, but gravity and condensed matter physics dictate that you cannot. Why, Novikov asks, is the consistency restriction placed on a time travel any different? Okay, so now let's just forget about all these paradoxes and let's see what are the ways through which you can travel to past, and is time travel to past really possible? One of the ways to travel to the past is through a hypothetical object known as Tipler Cylinder. According to Frank Tipler, in order to travel to past, all you need to do is to assemble a cylinder of infinite length and get yourself a spaceship. then you have to make that cylinder spin at a few billion revolutions per minute. And you have to fill this cylinder with a material having a total mass of 10 suns. Regardless of how you achieve this, the massive gravitational pull of the cylinder combined with the fast rotation would create a frame dragging effect which would drag space-time along with it. That means that you would hop on a spacecraft and follow the spiral course of the cylinder, and that would take you back in time. Time would fold upon itself and you will find yourself in a closed time-like curve. It's a loop in which you are traveling to the past, has always been a part of that past. But there's a major drawback, that is, the Tipler cylinder should have an infinite length. It would have to go on forever. But that's not possible. And if you want this to work with a finite cylinder, then you have to deal with some exotic matter and its negative energy, which we haven't discovered yet. The another and the easiest way to time travel to the past is through a wormhole. A wormhole acts as a tunnel with the two ends at separate points in space. Suppose you want to go from point A to B in space. Now instead of traveling all the way from A to B, wormhole bends the space-time, which provides you a shortcut to reach places. Now let's see how we can use this wormhole to travel back to time. Suppose you somehow take an end of a wormhole and make it travel to a significant speed of light and then put it back to its original position. As per Einstein's theory of relativity, time would run slower for the end of wormhole traveling near through the speed of light due to time dilation, and for the stationary end, time would be faster than the end which moved at a near speed of light. But if you enter in the stationary end of the wormhole, you will travel to the past when you come out of the other end where time was running slow. Think about it like this. One of the end of the wormhole is at your home on Earth, and someone took the other end on a spaceship at near speed of light or near to a massive body having a huge gravitational pull and then put it back on Earth. Now for this end, time was running slower due to time dilation. So let's say if 100 years had passed, for the end of black hole which was stationary on Earth, only 14 years will be passed for the moving end of wormhole according to time dilation formula if you travel at 99% of the speed of light. So if you enter a stationary end after 100 years on Earth, you will leave the moving end 100 minus 14, 86 years back, because only 14 years has passed for it. So you have traveled 86 years into the past. Now these wormholes are consistent with the general theory of relativity, but whether wormholes actually exist is to be seen. And even if they exist, they are so unstable that even if a single photon will pass through it, it will collapse. Scientists say that for the wormhole tunnel to stay open for a time in which we can travel through it, it would again require something called exotic matter, which has a negative energy which we haven't discovered yet. So until now it's pretty much clear that time travel to the past is almost impossible. But quantum mechanics actually opens up a tiny little window of possibility to travel to the past through the Casimir Effect, by which we can actually produce negative mass energy in the laboratory, but in exceedingly tiny quantities, which are not enough to keep the wormhole tunnel open. So if we go back to our main question, that is time travel to the past possible? At this point of time I will say that no, it's not possible to travel back in time, but I also want to add that yes, there is a slight possibility that we might be able to do it in future. Thank you guys for watching the video, and if you have learned something, then please like my video and subscribe to my channel for this kind of amazing stuff.